Hello WinCraps fans. Let's talk about dice roll files. Dice roll files are collections of dice rolls which have been saved to your computer's hard drive. They can be used for recording, editing, reviewing, analyzing, or replaying rolls. You can either create dice roll files yourself or get them from other sources, such as the Bet and Roll Files page on cloudcitysoftware.com. Dice roll files are actively played directly to or from your hard drive, so there's no save option. They're automatically saved as you create them. Each roll is composed of die 1 and die 2 and consumes 1 byte of disk space. So 50,000 rolls would be a dice file of 50K and 1 million rolls would be a dice file of 1 megabyte. So let's start by taking a look at a dice roll file. I'm going to open the dice roll file screen from the action menu, and I'm going to hold down the control key so that the dice roll file screen remains on top of the craps table at all times. Next, I'm going to select File, New/Open, and I'm going to select this file hotbits1.roll. That comes with WinCraps, so if you'd like to open it yourself and take a look at it, you can. Now we can see here, that's a file of 10,000 rolls, and here are those two pieces of data that it contains, die 1 and die 2, and it's just a long list. That's all there is to it. You can scroll through the list, you can look at all the different numbers that are there. But we actually can deduce a couple other pieces of information from those die 1 and die 2. First of all, they are in sequence, so we can count them. This roll number 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. If you were further down in the list, it might be kind of hard to see. Do you really know what roll number this one is? Well, there's a feature on here. If you go up to the display menu and select roll numbers, an additional column will appear that shows what the roll numbers are. So now when I'm further down on the list, I know exactly where I'm at. Another piece of information we can get is the dice total. Here I'm on roll number 1. I can see it's a 4-4, so obviously the dice total is 8. And I could display that as well. From the display menu, I could select dice totals. Now you may or may not want that yourself, so you can turn it off. Or maybe you don't want the dice. Maybe you just want the total. You could turn off the dice display and just look at the totals. So whatever you want, that's all up to you. Now notice that we're looking right now at one single column of dice rolls. If we were to increase the size of the dice roll files window, we would make more space available, and it's going to try to display more rolls. So it'll break them up into columns. So let me do that. I'm going to widen the screen. We'll go to 2 columns, now 3 columns, and we could just keep going through more and more columns. If I wanted to maximize as many rolls as I could, obviously I could maximize the size of the window, and then I'm going to get a lot. But I also have the option here of clicking this black triangle just to the right of the scroll bar. That will increase the size of the roll list so that it gets as much of the window as it can. So I'll do that. Now you can see we really got a lot of rolls to look at. If I really even want to get more on there and go a step further, I could decrease the size of the font. The size of the dice here are increased or decreased along with the size of the font. So I can increase or decrease the size of the font using Control plus and Control minus. If you forget that, you can go up to the display menu and look at font. You can see smaller and larger, Control minus, Control plus. So if I'll click Control plus, I can see I've got 13 columns going to 15, 16, 17, 18, 21. It can fit more and more rolls onto the screen as it gets smaller. Now, however many you want to see, as you can still read them, whatever's comfortable, it's up to you. I've noticed one little interesting thing here. As they get smaller, the colors seem to kind of form a mosaic, and you can start picking out some patterns. Well, if you happen to notice a pattern that repeats, I would be highly suspect that whatever roll file you're looking at is not random. So just another little thing to think about there. All right, let me make this bigger again. And let's go back to a normal sized window here, and let's see our additional data. Now, you've noticed that when I increased the size and the number of columns, it increased the columns of dice rolls, but it did not increase the columns of these roll numbers. I could have put that in here, but it really eats up a lot of real estate if our objective is to look at more dice rolls. So what it really just shows is the roll number for the first column. So for instance, this one here is roll 19, then it would be 20, 21, next row starts with 22. So you could read that. Now, you also may notice that one of these cells here has a background colored white. That's called the next roll number. And it can be moved around. It's used for selecting rolls to play, to record, or to edit. And if I want to move it around, I just click wherever I want to go. Let's say I want to go to roll 19. I can click there, and it goes to roll 19. Wherever I click, it goes. And I can read which roll number it is from the screen here, or I can look up here on the right. It says next roll is on number 46. Now I can use this to go to a specific one if I wanted to. I could just enter in, let's say I want to go to roll number 15. I enter in 15, hit return, and there it goes. It moves up there for me. So the next roll number, depending upon which mode you've selected, either record or play, it's the point at which roll is going to be played back from or recorded into. And I'll show you how to use those in just a minute. Now, if you want to view the dice here as numbers instead of looking at actual dice, you can do that. There's an option on the display menu. You click Show Dice as Numbers. It'll also change the little roll pad over here as well. Personally, I prefer the dice, so I'll turn that back off. Now you can also change the colors. Maybe you don't like these colors. You can click Display, Colors. Up will pop a little color palette, and you can choose whatever you like. Let's say I want to change aces to black. When I click on it here, that shows is selected, has a black border, and now I'll click a black color, and all aces are black. Now I can either click colors in here, or I can use the color scroll bars here to set custom colors or tweak colors, however I like. Now there's one other option here. Instead of clicking the bars or in the color palette, I can use a color that's already on another combination. For instance, let's say I want aces to match this color for sixes. Maybe I don't recall which blue I had clicked on or what the color mix was, but I like it and I want to copy it. So I'll just hold down the Alt key and I'll click on 6, and now it will copy the color for 6 into the color here for aces. So you can do that. Now if I want to make multiple selections, I can do that. I hold down the Control key and I can click on Other Combinations. Now you can see they all get a black box around them, so they're selected, and then whatever color I click is going to be set for all those. If I want to choose a specific row, I could hold down the Shift key and click on the row, and now that row is going to be selected, and I could set that. If I want to change the color of the whole thing, I can say Control A, or I could go to the menu and select all. Here's the Control A. So select them all, and then I can choose a color. And you might find that kind of useful. Like, let's say you're playing the lay 4, and you want to look at the roll file and you want to pick out the 7s and 4s. If they're all the same color, of course you can pick them out, but it's not quite so easy. They don't really pop out at you. Let's say if I change them all to white, and then I hold down Shift and I click on the 7s, I want to make those red. Hold down Shift, click on the 4s, I want to make those yellow. Now you look over at the roll file and you can see it's quite easy to pick those out. They really pop. Now if you want to get back to the standard here, WinCraps original colors, you can hit Control A and click on Default. Everything goes back to normal. If, for instance, I had chosen some setup that I like, maybe I want the 7s to be black, and I want to copy that to other screens, click on Menu. I can say Copy To, and it'll ask if you want to copy it to the dice roll pad. That's the one over here that we use on the main game table. I could say yes. Do you want to copy them to the roll total screen? You could say yes. Or by the same token, if you had colors set elsewhere, you could say Copy From, and it could copy from the roll pad or the roll total screen. Now, just like we did with the dice roll file, on the dice roll file screen, I want to view them as numbers. I can do the same thing on the palette. I can show those as numbers, and I can change the font. So now let's say you want to record your own session and be able to review the rolls, and then perhaps you'd like to replay those same rolls later to compare various strategies. So there's a number of different ways to record rolls. One is you could go to the Statistics menu, Events Log. Up in the options, you'll see Events to Record. You can see there's an option here, Rolls. So you can record rolls that way. They'll show up here in the Events Log, and you can see what they are and analyze them. The problem is you're not going to be able to play those back. Another way to record rolls would be to create an AutoBet file, and you can create a file that outputs to a text file, and you can put the value of the dice for each and every roll, and you can put commentary along with it, whatever you like. That might be useful, but again, you can't play back from that. If you want to be able to record some dice rolls and play them back, you need to go through the Dice Roll Files screen. So what we're going to do is going to go up to the File menu, and we're going to select New, Open again. Now, if I select one of the files that appears here, they all have rolls in them, so those rolls would appear. I would then have to delete those rolls to start over, or I can just start with a new file name. So I'm going to start with a file name. I'll say 1. I'll call it 1. And now you can see up here it says 1.roll. So I've opened a new file. You can see that it's empty and it's waiting for some kind of input. So on the Dice Roll Files screen, we have a little roll pad here. Now this roll pad is always active. Up here above there, you see some buttons that say off, record, and play. This has to do with play on the game table, not with what's going on this screen here. So don't confuse those. These roll buttons here are always active, and don't hit them inadvertently. You might kind of mess up what you have on a roll file. So I can click these numbers now, and I can start building a roll file. Let's say I've got some dice. I'm sitting here at my table. I'm rolling the dice, and I want to input those numbers. I roll, I input, roll, input, roll, input, and I just start putting these rolls in there and start building my file. Piece of cake. Or let's say that I've gotten some rolls written down from last time I played in the casino, or maybe a buddy sent me a roll list. Same thing, I can just read off the list and input them. Now, how are we going to edit this thing? There's this box we talked about, the next roll number. Well, we can click on something else and we can edit it. So let's say the last number I put in there was a hard 6, and then it was a mistake. Maybe that should have been a hard 8. Well, what I can do is click on the hard 6. You can see next roll moves to there. And then I want to replace it. So I come down here to the roll pad, and there's an option to replace. And now I can choose my hard 8, click that, and now it has replaced that 6. You can do that on any roll you want. You can replace any rolls. Now let's say I want to insert. Let's say, oh, I forgot the very first roll on my list was an 11. I forgot to put it in there. So I want to put an 11 here and then push everything up to a higher number. So I'll click on the first roll, and now I go over here and I click on Insert, and I press 11, and now the 11 goes in. You can see all the other rolls moved up higher. Now, how about if I want to get rid of a roll? Let's say this 7 shouldn't have been there. I didn't want that. Well, I click on the 7 and I just hit the delete key and it's gone. Now, you can also make multiple selections. If you'll click on one roll and then hold down either the shift or the control key and click on another roll, it will make a selected block out of those rolls, the first one and the last one that you entered. It makes a big block. Unfortunately, you can't select rolls that are not together if they're separated by unselected rolls. It has to be one big block. So here I have a block of 9 rolls. It tells me over here that I've got 9 rolls selected. The selection includes this next roll number. So it's all the blue background rolls plus the white black background. Those are all selected rolls. Now if I hit the delete key, I would end up deleting the whole block there, and it's gone. So let's enter a few more rolls here just so we have a few to look at. And I want to show you a couple other editing options. If you look up at the Edit menu, there's another Insert and Replace and a thing called Scramble. Well, Insert and Replace, we just looked at Insert and Replace over here. So what's the difference? Let me move the next roll up here to roll number 1, and I'll select Insert. And it says, well, how many random rolls would like to insert beginning at roll number 1? So obviously I could have inserted one roll at a time over here and chosen exactly what roll I wanted. But here I can choose more than one. Let's say I want to put in 5 rolls. I enter 5, and it's just going to put in 5 random rolls. If I didn't want random, of course, I would have to choose the exact rolls and just do them one at a time. But I say 5, and I do that. It puts them in, and now you can see my file size is increased, but it selected them as well. So if you happen to have made a mistake and you didn't want those in there, you can just immediately hit the delete key, and now they'll all go back and disappear again. And now I can say, well, maybe I meant to just put in 4, enter 4, and now they're there. When you click somewhere else, they're deselected. You'd have to remember what they were to reselect them if you want to get rid of them. All right, and of course you can do that wherever. It doesn't matter where you have the next roll selected. You can click insert and it will insert however many rolls you want beginning at that point. Now this time, how about we select replace? If you select replace, it's going to replace whatever rolls you have selected. Now I only have one roll selected here, so we'll replace that one. It's a 6. Let me do it again. I'll show you. Now I replaced it to a 5. If I have multiple rolls selected, hold down the shift key and I'll click the end here. Now I have 3 rolls. This time I hit replace. And now it'll ask me, hey, do you want to make some random replacements? If not, it'll replace all selected rolls. So I'll say no. So it replaced all 3 of them. Great, that's what I wanted. How about if I would have selected the other one, replace, and I say, yes, I want to make some random replacements. So it says, well, how many do you want to do? So for instance, here I said 1. Well, only one of these rolls is going to get replaced. I'm not sure which one. It'll be randomly selected. But what if I selected, say, 3? Is it going to replace all 3 of them? Well, it might, but that's not a certainty because these are going to be random replacements. It might choose the first one randomly, and then maybe the second one randomly, and then randomly in the third time it might choose the first one again. It might skip the third one completely. You just don't know. These are random. So if I wanted to ensure that they were all replaced, and I didn't choose all of them as was given to me before, the earlier option, I could just choose a very high number, like say 300 here, and I was going to make 300 random selections. Chances are it is going to get every one of them this time because there were only 3 of them. Okay, let me select another block of rolls here now. I'm going to click on roll number 1 and let's say roll number 10. So I've got 10 rolls selected, and I'm going to go up to edit menu and select scramble. Now rolls are scrambled by performing swaps. Nothing is replaced, nothing is insert. All it does is take the rolls that they are and rearrange them. Okay, it does that by swapping. It's asking you now, do you want to swap all the rolls, or you want to just do a certain number of random swaps within these selected rolls? So I'll say no for the selected, and now it swaps all of them. Now one little caveat here is that it is possible for 2 swaps to undo each other. For instance, let's say here roll number 1 gets swapped with roll number 4, and then it goes to roll 2, it gets swapped with 10, and 3 gets swapped with 9. It comes to 4, and 4 randomly chooses to swap back with number 1. So it basically undoes the original swap that number 1 did. So it might look to you like something didn't get swapped. In fact, it did. It went through the process. It's just a random process, so that could happen. If I have a number of rolls selected and I choose scramble, and I want to choose a selected number of random swaps, then it'll ask me how many swaps. And just like the replace option, you can say a certain number. Let's say if I just said 2 swaps, then only 2 will be formed. If I choose the same as the number here, 10, it doesn't mean all 10 of them will get swapped. It just means 10 random swaps are going to occur. It may be all of them, or it may just be a few. And then the more number you put, the higher probability that all of them are going to be covered. All right, I think that covers all that. Let's say now we want to continue recording, so I'm going to move the next roll box to the end of the file, and I want to continue recording. Only now, instead of recording from the Dice Roll File screen, I want to record from the game table. Now is when we come up here and we click record, so we're going to record during gameplay. Now at the center of the table, at the bottom here, you'll notice a little icon appears, and this is showing an arrow pointing from the dice to the disc. So that's saying that all our rolls are going to be recorded onto the disc. It shows the arrow and it's in red showing it's recording. And now, no matter how I roll the dice, they're going to go into this dice roll file. So let's say I want to hand roll them with the roll your own numbers pad. Let's say I want to roll a 12 now. I click 12. Here it is, 12 on the table, and here it is, 12 in the dice roll file. Let's click an 11. Here's an 11, and 11 went in. It got recorded. What if I want to choose random rolls? I could right-click over the game table. I just rolled a 4, and there it is, 4. Now I rolled another 4, and there that is. So you can do it that way. Now, how about hyperdrive? Well, we can do that too. That's also random rolling. It's just high speed. So if I click hyperdrive now I've slowed it down so it doesn't blaze too fast, but now you can see it progressing through the dice roll file. Now, if I wanted to go quicker, obviously I could speed it up here. But if I wanted to go blazing fast, what I could do is close the dice roll file screen and then click the hyperdrive, and it'll go through very quickly. Now, there's another option here called auto scroll, and I'll turn it off for the moment. Now, if I go back to the hyperdrive, watch what's going to happen. It's going to fill up the dice roll file screen, and it's going to keep going, but we won't be able to see anything happening. So I'll do that. There it is. It filled the screen. Now you can't see anything happening. Now, you can tell from the data up here that rolls are being added, but we're not observing anything. So let's stop that for a moment. Let's say we want to keep that next roll in view because it's the most recent roll. We want to keep that in view. And let's say I want it up here somewhere during the middle or near the middle. So I'll click on Display, Auto Scroll, Mid, and now the next roll will appear up here in the middle of the screen. And now when I hit hyperdrive, now it's just going to scroll from there. Now maybe that's kind of wasted space. Maybe I want to put that at the bottom. So I'll say Auto Scroll, Bottom. Now it goes down to the bottom and it scrolls across there. Now there's one other little thing here called Auto Scroll Bottom Right. What that does is not only does it stay on the bottom, but it rearranges everything so that the next roll is going to appear in the bottom corner. Now you might want to use that for a number of different things. For instance, let's say I want to go through the roll file and I want to see what's being recorded. I always want it visible, but I want to maybe make a kind of like a ticker tape, you know. I want something across the bottom of the screen, for instance. So let's make this window small so that it's down to one row. Maybe I'm going to maximize this, and maybe I'm going to stretch the window towards the end. Maybe I even want to get rid of some of this extraneous data. I don't want the roll numbers here. I don't want the dice totals. I just want the dice. Now I can put it down at the bottom of the screen, and now I know that whenever I'm rolling, the newest roll is always going to be on the right, and the rolls are going to scroll to the left. So let me hit the hyperdrive now, and you can see whether perhaps that's still too fast. Let me slow it down a bit. You can see they're scrolling left, so the most recent roll is always the one on the right. Maybe you don't like a row like that. Maybe you'd rather have it in a column. Well, fine, make a column out of it. And it still has the latest roll is at the bottom right. Of course, it's just one column. But now I can hit the hyperdrive, and you'll see now they scroll up. So the latest roll is always at the bottom, and the older rolls are scrolling to the top. Now, it doesn't have to be a single. I mean, you could watch two columns at once if you wanted, and it's still going to scroll them, and it's still going to have the most recent in the bottom. When I'm recording from the dice roll file screen, remember I could click on something I could insert or replace? Well, when you're recording from the main game table, insert does not exist. Even though you might have it selected on the dice roll file screen, there is no insert capability from the main screen. Because when you insert something, the whole roll file needs to be rearranged and make space for whatever you're going to insert. And you can take the time to do here, that's fine. But if you're on the main game table playing and you're having it insert something and it has to rearrange the dice roll for every roll of the dice, that's going to slow things down for you. So that's why that doesn't exist there. The insert and replace here is really just for this roll pad. Okay, now how about if I've recorded some rolls into a text file? Maybe I had gone to a casino earlier and I had written down some files, some rolls, and I got home and I put them into a text file. Or maybe a friend sent me a text file that had some rolls in it, or maybe I found it on the internet. Well, I can get those rolls into WinCraps. Obviously, I could sit here with the list and I could put them in manually clicking on these roll buttons, or I could read it in. If the file I'm looking at includes just the die numbers, die 1 and die 2, WinCraps will read it in no problem. If it includes other data, well, it kind of depends. So I've created a little file here we can show you as an example. Here's a text file that includes some die, 1 through 6, and I'm just using pairs here just for illustration. So 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5, 6, 6. And I've got them arranged vertically. I got a second set arranged horizontally, a third set that are horizontal with some oddball spacing, and a fourth set that includes a bunch of letters. Now WinCraps can read this in, and it will create a dice roll file out of it, and it will ignore all the extraneous data, all the dashes, all the letters, the spacing. It'll ignore all that, and it'll just load it into the dice roll file. So let's try that. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to delete all the file rolls that I have here. I'm going to hit Control A to select the whole list of what I've already put in, and hit Delete. Now it's empty. Now it doesn't have to be empty. I could tack on whatever I'm going to paste in, but I just want to show you right now from an empty file. I'm going to click on Edit, Paste From, Text File. Now I called this one Rolls Example, and now it loads it in, and now just to make it a little bit clearer, I'm going to make 6 columns. And you can see the data that I had entered, 1 through 6, numbers 2 through 12, are appearing here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And here's the 4 sets. So regardless of how they were arranged or written down and whatever extraneous data was in there, it filtered it all out and came up with a roll file. Now, if your text file includes other numbers, 1 through 6, that are not to represent dice, well, that could be a problem. Then now WinCraps thinks it's a dice, and it's going to include it, so it could mess it up for you. So if that's the case, you're going to have to go through your file, and you might have to weed that stuff out. However, let's say you've got it in a spreadsheet, perhaps something like an Excel spreadsheet. Maybe you've got die 1 and die 2 listed separately in a couple of columns. Well, no problem. You could save those columns to a text file, and it doesn't matter how you save them. You could save them to a comma delimited text file, a tab delimited text file, space delimited, it doesn't matter. All those delimiters we're going to ignore. They'll get weeded out, and it'll just get the dice. So you should be able to do that. Now, how do we stop recording? If you're on the main game table, you see this little icon down here. You can click on the icon, and it'll say recording is stopped. And do you want to now rewind for playback? You can say yes or no. And you could also do the same thing. Maybe reactivate it here. Instead of clicking on it, you can just hit the escape key, and the same box will pop up. Or let's say we have we're on record. We can look at the dice roll file screen. We can just click off from here. So a number of different ways to stop it. Now, if I want to pick up recording again, I could just turn it back on, record, or I could use these buttons here. Remember, I said they're always active, but make sure that your next roll is where you want it. So if I want to append these rolls here, I would click next roll at the end, and now I could start recording more rolls. I could record from the table. Again, I'm just back to normal. One little side note here, I don't know if I mentioned, when you're on the Dice Roll Files screen and you hit Control A, if you look at the Edit menu, select all, that's Control A. It's not just going to select all dice rolls necessarily. It depends upon where the focus is. If I happen to have my cursor in this little box down here where it says Format, and I hit Control A, what it does is it selects all of what's in that box. Same thing if I'm up here on the next roll. If I do that, it's going to select everything that's in there. If I want to for sure select all dice rolls, I would have to click on the dice roll file list and then hit Control A, and now the focus is set there. Everything will be selected. I can see it's all in a blue background plus the next roll number. Okay, so now we've created a dice roll file. We want to play it back. Well, maybe not necessarily this one. I can go back to a previous one, so let's do that. Let's use the Hot Bits 1. Let's say we want to play that one back. So we open it up. Here it starts on roll number 1. And this time, if I want to play them back, I definitely have to hit this button over here, the play button. And once I do, I will notice on the table this time I have a little icon that shows an arrow coming from the disk to the dice. So now I'm going from the file to the dice rolls. And now I can just start rolling dice. So I would expect the very first roll here is a hard 8. So if I roll the dice, let's say I'm going to hit the right mouse button. There it is, 4-4 hard 8. Next one should be a 6-1-7. There it is. Next one should be 5-3-8. Okay. If I want to choose the hyperdrive, same thing, it will go through randomly. Normally would have been a random selection, but it's going to go through the dice roll file now. So it's just going to go through it. I've slowed it down a little bit here, so let's try that. And now you can see it's just going to go through that file. If I want to select a roll, specific roll, what's going to happen there? While I'm playing back, do you think it'll affect the file? Let's see, I'm on roll number 44, that's selected. There's 10,000 rolls. I'm looking at a 9. How about if I go to the table and I roll a 12? Well, there's my 12. Well, let's go back here. I'm still looking at a 9, roll number 44 with 10,000 rolls. So in other words, nothing changed. So I can come to this dice roll pad and I can manually select rolls out of here, and it's not going to mess up my dice roll file. If I want to then resume my dice roll file rolling, now I can just hit the right mouse button to do a random roll or do the hyperdrive, and it's going to resume using the dice roll file. So it doesn't interfere with it. Now there's another thing you can change for the dice rolls, and that's the probability feature on the configuration screen. If you change the probability and then you roll the dice randomly using a right mouse button or perhaps a hyperdrive button, then the probability will affect the output, yes. And if you're recording a dice roll file, then whatever it has been affected will be recorded into the file. But it doesn't work the other way around. If you have a dice roll file set and you try to play something back, it plays back exactly what's there. It does not run through the probability feature. So let's say I had set up probability to avoid all 10s. No 10s should appear. But I come to a dice roll file and it wants to roll a 10. It will roll a 10 because it doesn't go through the probability feature. So just so you're aware of that. As you know, I just pointed out rolls can be played back manually or automatically as fast as you want. You can close the screen, dice roll screen, and reopen it. If nothing will change, you'll be all set to go. But as before with recording, we can turn off the playback a number of different ways. On the main screen, you can click the little icon down there, and the same thing, it'll say playback stopped. Do you want to rewind? You can say yes or no. It rewound, so you can see it still has the icon on the table, and on here, dice roll file, you can see it moved back to roll number 1. Now, another way, of course, is just to come to the dice roll file screen and click off, and now you can see our little icon has disappeared, and so that turns it off as well. Now, there's one other thing up here on the dice roll file screen. It's called last roll was roll number. In this case, I just rolled one. It's roll 67. Our next roll. Let's see. No, I didn't do that. Let me redo it just to show you. I'm going to click a playback. I'm going to play back one roll, and that was roll number 37. And you can see the next roll is now on roll number 38. So now, let's say I wanted to edit something. So maybe I turn this off. Maybe I would come up here and I want to change that to a 12. Or I want to do some editing. But now I want to get back to where I was. Oh, I forgot where it was. Well, I can look up here and say the last roll was a 37. Now I want to go to roll 38. So I'm just going to put in 38, hit enter, and now I'm back to where I was. So just to let you know, the last roll was just whatever last actually was rolled on the table, not what you last had clicked on. Let's see, I talked about the auto scroll, and it works both for the recording and for playback. There's one thing I didn't mention. Let's say you want to have a dice roll file open, you want to see what's been played, but you don't want to see what's coming up. So there's a couple things you could do. One is you could say I want to auto scroll at the bottom. I put that down to the bottom, let's say bottom right, and let's see here. Oh, I have to get further down in the file here to show that. So let's say you do this, it goes down to the bottom right, and now I can make it so that new rolls I won't see. This only shows the dice roll history. Another option I can use, I can come up here and select display hide next rolls. Now everything from next roll forward is going to show an X. It just doesn't mean that the data is gone. The data is still there, it's just not displaying it. So now I can have the dice roll file open. I can see rolls are coming up, but I can see what has played, but not what's coming up. So you may or may not want to use that. It's up to you. Now, here's a real cool thing. You can manage dice roll files through auto betting. So let's close this screen for a moment. Let's open up the AutoBet screen. And there's a few actions and a few variables that we can use. If you look at the action list, you can see here's playback dice roll file from file name from roll number. And there's a deactivate dice roll file. So I've created a few lines here. You could say, give it the command, playback dice roll file, and put your name in here. Let's say I put in hotbits1.roll. And I want to roll from, or start rolling from a certain point. I want to start rolling from roll number 10. So it'll do that. It'll open up the file, go to roll 10, and that's where the roll is going to start playing back. If I remove this part and I just say playback dice roll file, give it the name, like hotbits1, then it opens the file. Since it doesn't say roll number, it goes by default to roll number 1. If I also don't include the file name, I just say playback dice roll file, then it's going to say, well, you didn't give me a file name, so I'm going to go to the dice roll file screen and see what's there. And if there's something there, I'll start playback on there. You didn't tell me where to start, so it's going to default to roll number 1. And if there's nothing there, well, then it won't replay anything. Now, I also have a command deactivate dice roll file. So I can create statements throughout my auto betting, and I can turn playback on and off using these statements. Now, if I want to switch dice roll, let's say I had 2 dice roll files I want to use, and I want to switch from one to another. I don't need to deactivate the first one before I activate the next one. I could just say playback dice roll file 1, and when I'm ready for 2, I just say playback dice roll number 2. You don't need to say the deactivate in between. You could, it's not going to hurt anything, but you don't need to. Now, those are the 2 actions. The variables we have, you can find those under the variables. And they are right here. Dice roll file next roll number, dice roll file length, and dice roll file end reached. Now, the next roll number, as you recall, on the dice roll file screen is the white box here. That is the next roll number. And right now it's on number 15. So if I were on auto betting, and I said check stack 1 equals dice roll file next number, it would give it a value of 15. Now I could do the reverse here. I could say dice roll file next roll number equals, and I could give it a number. And it will then jump to that place in the file and continue playback at that point. So you could use that with the conditional statements as well. If such and such happens, then jump to this point, or if such and such happens, do that. Use it however you like. The next statement, a dice roll file length. This is a read-only variable, and you can assign it to a check stack, or you can just use it in a logical statement. Let's say I don't want to use a certain file size or whatever. I could say if dice roll file length is less than 100, then, or 190 or whatever, do something. The last one here, dice roll file end reached, is also a read-only variable, and it's either true or false. So if it's reached the end, it will be true, and then you can do something about it. Maybe you want to stop auto-rolling, maybe you want to load a new file, whatever. So I've done that. I've made a couple of AutoBet files here that manage some roll files. I've put them on cloudcitysoftware.com. If you want to download them, you can play with them. The first one is called Play Multiple Roll Files Sequentially. Okay, there's some green commentary in here just to kind of give you some information. But basically what it does, if you're initializing the script, it's going to clear check stack 1, because we're going to use that, and it's going to clear all the check stack names. Then you're going to make a list here of whatever files you want to use. Let's say that you had recorded some roll files. Maybe you went to a casino one day and you recorded all your rolls when you got home. And maybe you did it on another day and another day, and maybe a friend sent you one. So you got a bunch of roll files you want to use. Well, you could combine them all into one big file and play them back, no problem. But maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you want to keep them separate. Well, you could make copies of them and combine them, or you could come into a file like this, and you could list them out, how the order you want them played. And then we're going to use this check stack number 1 to reference which one we're playing back. We're going to start on number 1. So then we're going to issue the command playback dice roll file check stack name 1. So check stack name 1 is hotbits1 roll, for what I've written here anyway. So it's going to play that dice roll file. Then I have another line down here that says if the dice roll file end is reached, then we're going to increment check stack 1, and that's now going to become 2. Then it's going to say if check stack name 2 is empty, then we're going to say that, hey, we reached the end of the files. Well, it's not. Check stack 2 says hot bits 2. So instead it says playback dice roll file check stack name 2, which is hot bits 2. So it'll load that. It'll play that. When it reaches the end of that one, it's going to increment once more. It'll go to 3. Is 3 empty? No. So it's going to play that. When it gets to 4, it's going to say, is check stack name 4 empty? It is. And say, okay, now we're done. End of dice roll files. So there you go. You've played back all your files sequentially. You didn't have to edit them or stick them together. And you can rearrange them if you like. Now, you can also span multiple sessions, but if you do that, you're going to have to make sure that you preserve the check stacks and the dice roll file in between the sessions. Because if you don't, the check stacks and the check stack names will get erased and you'll be lost. Okay, there's another file I created here that I'll show, give you some ideas. You may or may not want to use something like this. Let's say you're somebody who believes in controlling the dice. I have a file here called Play Multiple Roll Files According to Points. So let's say I believe in precision shooting, and I've done some practicing, and I'm practicing all my come-out rolls, and I record those into a file. And then I set up for shooting points, inside points 5, 6, 8, 9, and I've got a roll file composed of that. Maybe I have another file of trying to hit outside numbers, 4 and 10. And now I want to play some systems to see how I would fare with my rolls. So I can come here and say, first initializing, we're going to clear all the check stacks. So I'm going to use 3 check stacks to keep track of where we're at. 3 because I've got 3 files I'm referencing. So now I say, if next roll is a come out roll, then we're going to increment a counter. Now it starts on 0 because we cleared all the check stacks. So the first one is going to be number 1. So it's going to say playback dice roll file hot bits 1 from roll number 1. Then let's say I roll a point number. Now it's next roll that will come through. It'll say what's the point? It'll say it's a 5. It'll say if the point is 5. Now we're going to increment check stack number 2. Now it was also on 0, so it would become 1. And now it says playback dice roll file hot bits 2 from roll number 1. And it plays that. Now let's say we 7 out. It goes back to next roll as a come out roll. It increments check stack 1 again, which was at 1, so now it becomes 2. So now it says playback dice roll file hot bits 1 from roll number 2. So in essence, the check stack 1, check stack 2, and in fact check stack 3, they're like markers. They're keeping track of how far we have progressed in each roll file so that when we come back to it, we can pick up from that point. So I hope that made sense. Now, you don't have to use them the way I've written them here. You could use it however you want for whatever reason. I could have a statement in here that says, if my bankroll goes over $500, I'm going to switch to a different roll file. No problem. Whatever my reasons are, I can put that in. Okay, let's go back to the dice roll file screen. Just a couple other things I want to talk about. Output and printing. There's a little portion of the screen down here that says output options and a box that says format. These 4 words that appear here, roll number, die 1, die 2, and total, those will insert the number of what they actually are. So roll number 1 would be 4, 4, and total would be 8. You can rearrange these. You could delete some of them, or you can add some extra information if you want, some extra words, some extra symbols. And it will output that, like if I say edit, copy to a text file, it will output my rolls in this format. Now the same thing is true if I want to print. If I hit print, it's going to try to print all the data here, and first it's going to ask me, do you want to print all rolls? In this case, I'll say yes, because if I say no, it only does selected rolls, and right now I only have 1 selected. So I'll say yes. And it's going to say, would you like to print them left to right, then top bottom? That's the way they appear on the screen here. If not, you can reverse it, top to bottom, then left to right. And now it's going to say, right now in our file here, we have 10,001 rolls. And based upon that and the amount of data we have selected and the font size, it's going to take 112 pages to print all these rolls. Wow, I don't really want 112 pages. How about we try to trim that down? So let's come back to output options and say, well, I don't really need the roll number. I just want to look at the rolls. So I'll delete that. I'll delete the parentheses. I don't want those. I'll just leave it like that. So now I could say print, print them all. Now I'm down to 48 pages. Well, that's still a lot. So how about we change the font size? Go from font size 20 down to the minimum of 6. And say print. Now that it's going to be smaller print so I can fit more on a page. And now you can see for 10,001 rolls, it's only going to take 5 pages to print it all out. Well, that's a little more reasonable. Maybe I want to do that. If you don't want to get rid of this and go back to what it was originally, just select it all and hit delete, and it'll re-enter the default there. Let's see, one other thing I want to talk about up here in the file menu, there's an item new/open pop-up. This is for a feature that not many people have. I do have a few customers who have it. They have an external machine, a little dice roller, and it has a little video camera on there. And each time it rolls, it records what it has rolled, and it creates a little file that has the roll number in it. Well, WinCraps can read that dice roll file and play the roll in WinCraps. You can also set up the recorder so that it records it as well. So you would select that, and you have to tell it what the file name is, of course. And it'll say a big green box here. You're now looking at a pop-up roll file. So WinCraps just sits and waits and says, okay, I'm waiting for this dice roll file to appear. And when it shows up, it plays it, and then it destroys that file, and then it goes back to waiting again. So this little machine can sit over there and roll dice and create files and plunk them out. WinCraps will play them, and it just keeps going. Get rid of this. You could just click on it and close it. I think I've covered pretty much about everything on here. These things are explained in the help file as well, but if I have missed something or something wasn't clear to you, feel free to drop me a line. You can do that at wincraps@cloudcitysoftware.com. So I hope you found that informative and you get some good use out of dice roll files. Thanks for watching. Bye.